This particular talk is classified as advanced. I think we reclassified it as beginners because I'm not going to talk about Drupal, advanced things about Drupal. What I want to talk about is a business problem that we saw needing to be solved. And about 3 years ago, almost to the day, we at AXA, a company that I'm working with, started on the implementation of an ERP system in a company in Brisbane that distributes what they call continence products. Most of us would call them incontinence products. If any of you need to buy them, you can go to the website, and there are about 3,000 different varieties that you can buy, which staggered me. And you'll be using effectively the predecessor to eGility on that website to purchase these products. The issue that they faced was that they had an ERP system at the back end of their business, which was highly functional. They provided distribution for other organizations who had business rules which were not typical of the ones that you would find being solved in a normal shopping cart. So those business rules were complex, and if we were going to provide access via the web in a shopping cart, then those business rules had to apply in the web functionality as well as the back end. So the products that were available to us, such as Drupal Commerce, Ubercart, really didn't provide us with anything that was useful other than perhaps a framework, because we needed to make sure that the business rules were centralized. There was no point in having business rules in the back-end system, and as they change, having to have those same business rules in the Drupal front end, because they would need to be kept in sync. And so we needed something where we had a set of business rules in one spot available to people inside the organization, because they ran a call center with some 60 to 80 people, also taking telephone orders. And those business rules and the capability for people to purchase on the web needed to be one and the same thing. So we needed some mechanism where we could have a website which provided just the presentation layer for what was essentially all of the functionality that was in the back-end system. So, I beg your pardon. So what we did was to combine Drupal and an ERP system called Adempio, which is an open source ERP, plus some customization to provide agility. So we've now got powerful engines at both the front and the back end, and only one point of storage for the business rules. In essence, I guess an e-commerce system needs to have a front end which is eye-catching, easy to use, and so on. It needs to build a customer-oriented site. It needs to be all of the things that all of you people will know. Easy accessibility and so on and so forth. And they're there essentially to attract people and get a community to buy. However, if that doesn't work through a back-end system so that people who are placing orders on the front end get them delivered on time, get them invoiced, well, invoiced in fact is done on the site, but get them delivered accurately, make sure that they're in stock and so on, then there are serious issues. And that efficiency needs to be very strong, because small sites with a few orders per day, they can manage things fairly easily. Large sites where they've got many orders per day, they've got to manage it in a much more sophisticated way. So typically what you see is, in the small end, people start building a website. They might use their e-commerce tools, they may well get a few orders every day. They can manage them with zero integration. They may get an email, they may get something off the site, they may get a printed document, or they may just interrogate the site. But essentially they do what they do, they go and find the product and they dispatch it, and it's all very, very manual. Then they start to grow, and as their web store grows, so applications are added, and it becomes much more complex. And so their business starts to look a bit more difficult to manage. There are often spreadsheets between various aspects of what they do. And those spreadsheets can either be uploaded manually or they can be scheduled, but typically the integration becomes quite complex. Manual integration, uploading CSVs, making sure that that all functions properly, lots of error-prone issues, possible rekeying of data, and generally manual intervention is fairly significantly a problem. Scheduled integration, much the same. They may have daily or weekly uploads, typically daily, and still they're not seeing in their back-end systems the activity that's taking place on their website because it's happening at the end of a day or at the end of a week. So this lack of integration has some significant issues for, I think what Dries was talking about this morning is the enterprise. Even for mid-market organizations. Lower down, not so much of a problem, but mid-market and enterprise, it's a real problem. In inventory, if they see inventory needs to be displayed online so that if it's not, and if it's not real time, then there are all sorts of possibilities of out-of-stock situations, customers becoming frustrated, promotions not in sync. Typically websites provide a significant number of promotions and different types of promotions, and if they're not in sync with the back end, then that will be a problem. Because they don't understand their demand properly, they may carry too much or too little inventory. In finance, there's usually a fair amount of rekeying of data, updating the general ledger, and so on and so forth. Information is out of date. Sales reporting is slow. It's typically out of date, and business decisions are made with information which is not particularly relevant. Customer service, there's no single view of the customer. Typically, you'll find there are different customer records held in the web store and in the back end often. And the synchronization of those is quite complex. Certainly the synchronization of delivery details and so on and so forth. Even products are often held in two separate places. And just making sure that your products are synchronized can also be a significant problem. You can't see all your customer transactions either, because some are stored in the website temporarily and they're not sort of transmitted to your back-end systems until some later stage. The other important thing is you've got out-of-date information on credit status. So unless the credit status is maintained from whatever source of channel, whatever channels you've got, then you've got customers who can potentially contravene their credit status without too much difficulty. Web store, difficult to keep up to date, accurate customer information and order history when it has this separate database. Restrictive payment options, no real-time view of inventory, and the product information is often out of sync with the physical stores. And even in shipping, often pick lists are rekeyed and open to errors. Now, I don't know whether you've seen these sort of issues, whether you recognize them as being issues, but certainly in the particular case that we were trying to solve, they were major problems that needed resolution. So, no problem. Where you have an existing ERP system, the web store will grow and the functionality is constrained by the legacy ERP system, because typically the legacy ERP systems are not easily designed or geared to interacting with a front-end web store. It's quite complex. If you want to make them interact, there's a lot of real effort that needs to go in to make that happen. An integrated e-commerce application, they are available, but they only integrate with the web store components and not the whole business, and fail when it comes to multiple web stores. So typically if you look at, say, something like Drupal Commerce or Ubercart, well, they do a job, but they really don't do a particularly good job when you're looking at a whole range of multiple issues, multiple warehouses, multiple websites, and so on. So we add multiple web stores, and each has got its own database of customers and products and promotions. And if they're different, then they've got separate management interfaces and so on. So the whole problem becomes quite complex quite quickly. We say what's needed is an ERP system. What's really needed is a method of making sure that what happens in the front end and the back end is totally in sync. And that can be achieved with an ERP system. Are you familiar with what an ERP system is? Do I need to explain? It's a business application. It's an order processing system that deals with inventory, supply chain, finance, manufacturing, and so on. So it's typically, people would know it as being SAP or something of that nature. In our case, we use an open source product called Adempiere, and if we just look at the components that I'm talking about, it's really the web interface with the ERP and CRM component. That's really the pieces that are coming together as eGility. So it's the interaction between Drupal and Adempiere under the Web 2 and ERP components there. So what's eGility? Well, eGility is, in a sense, the module that sits between the web front end and the ERP back end, although we're describing it as the complete solution. So it is both Drupal and the front end system, plus the integration, plus the Adempiere back end ERP system. The Drupal functionality, we can deal with multiple web stores. It provides all of the social media support. I thought it was mobile friendly until I heard Dries talk this morning, but maybe it will be. I think it probably is now, and certainly SEO friendly. And on the back end, we've got all of the support for products, promotions, financials, customer data, inventory, and shipping, and so on. The ERP system then deals with all of these sorts of issues, and the essential thing is that real-time data is flowing seamlessly from one system to the other and back again. So when someone enters, for example, their name and address, if we don't know them already, that is communicated back to the ERP system in real time, and the ERP system is updated on the spot. Same with data that's flowing for orders. So as they fill up their shopping cart is in fact in the back-end system. So if they abandon, we can see in the back-end system what they have abandoned. We can run reports to look at those orders that have been abandoned, and we can take some action to perhaps follow up. It's also fully integrated with their brick and mortar stores because the back-end system does all of that for them. It has all of the issues to do with, I guess, the normal integration of their PC access to the data and their PC functionality and so on. So it's a complete solution that really provides for multiple web stores, multiple warehouses, multiple clients, multiple currencies and so on, with no real issue between the front end and the back end. It can be simple, So only certain parts of the ERP system can be deployed, but it can be quite complex as many of the ERP systems that you'll see in large-scale organizations. So, why should you care? Well, I guess that's an important issue. As a Drupal developer, I guess it leaves you to focus on the look and feel and the branding and the usability and the development of the front-end e-commerce site. It keeps the customer spend on the design components and not building on the engine functionality. And it delivers the full functionality the client is looking for within their budget. It's all open source. So as a Drupal developer, you develop your front end, and clearly they need to install the back end as well, but that's nothing more than they would need to deal with anyway in an ERP solution. The back end's flexible, and it's already been built, and every form of trade transaction already exists and is already integrated with the Drupal front end. It just needs to be configured for the client's business model. So it brings together a very tight and complete solution for the client. Typically, we're looking at mid-market organizations. 1 million plus revenue customers, yep, they're all right. They're to some degree, I guess, bread and butter, but we're really looking to support, I guess, customers that are $10 million revenue and above. The organization that I was talking about earlier, I think was it 50? 50 of 25 million, okay. Then got bought out by a company that was over $1 billion turnover. But nevertheless, their website is still running quite successfully. So if a business is growing and it's too big for just a single web store and something like Drupal Commerce or Ubercart, then this forms a very sensible solution. If they're wanting something that will intervene between their web stores and their existing legacy system, it can also be deployed there. And it can also be used clearly where businesses are transitioning from bricks and mortar into, I guess, e-commerce. The likes of people like Jerry Harvey. Let's have just a quick look at a very simple case. This is not the prettiest of front ends. It's just a demonstration. You can do whatever you like with the front end. But what this shows is just a Drupal page. It has a catalog, which you can see. That catalog can be themed how you like. The catalog contains, I guess, products below that. And as I say, shows you a shopping cart up the top here. There's nothing fancy about that. All we're trying to show is that it's the functionality that's available. What you do in Drupal to pretty that up is entirely up to you as Drupal developers. If you then go down to, say, the shopping cart, in this case, you've got obviously some quantities, the products identified, promotion codes can be popped in so that promotions can be applied, and all of these images that you see are stored in the back-end ERP system. So everything that is relevant to the product or the customer or the transaction is actually in the ERP system. Drupal is just presenting this information. So at checkout, typical sort of checkout page, go through the various components that you would expect. And what happens at the back end is, now you won't be able to read this, but when you look at the ERP system, the information that has come through this whole system is immediately available in the ERP system. So if someone wants to ring back and say, well, why did you abandon a cart? They are looking actually at the ERP system to see exactly what they've done, where they stopped, and you can actually complete that order for a customer on the phone from the back-end ERP system. So you can do it for them even though they've started the transaction. Inventory is updated, so in this case you won't know the numbers, but you can see the reservation of stock. So until stock is delivered, obviously it's reserved. When it's shipped, then it comes out of reservation and goes into sales. And picking lists are created for the warehouse back-end functions within the ERP system. And if you can imagine a large number of orders coming through the website, coupled with orders that might come through a variety of other mechanisms, then a typical warehouse may choose to pick and ship maybe lunchtime and at the end of the day. So what they want to be able to do is produce a whole range of picking tickets, say at 10 o'clock in the morning, they'll pick, ready for delivery that afternoon, and then they'll do the same thing later in the afternoon, ready for shipment the following morning. So when they go through the process of producing their picking tickets, all of the web orders will be included in that. They're not something that's just special in the sense that they have to do anything different from what they would normally do. It's just a source of order, comes into the warehouse, they do their picking and they do their shipment in the normal course of events, together with orders that have come from any other channel. The system, sure.
How does it work with assembly, like items that may require assembly from other components? Does that fit into that piece? You know, say for example they stock units of particular pieces and then they need to put them together before they're shipped.
Yeah, well, all right. Yes, it does. Stephen, do you want to say something? There are a couple of ways of doing it, so we might as well deal with that.
The information just be stored as a bill of materials in the ERP system. The order would come through for the single product. It would be optionally issued to manufacturing if that's what was needed, if it was sort of a make-to-order type arrangement, or alternatively it could just be displayed. There are tick boxes on various products to say, are we going to display all of the components or just the total? If it's a matter of just picking 3 or 4 items from a group of items and there's no real manufacturing, well then it would just appear as such on the shipment document or the picking document.
Okay. All right. The solution can be hosted. It has the benefit of, I guess, backup and failover and lower IT costs. We provide consulting services, expertise and engineering. We would like to partner with Drupal partners for them to deal with the front end because I don't believe there are too many organizations that have both the front end web design, web development expertise and the ERP implementation and development expertise. And so we're looking to see if we can work cooperatively with Drupal partners to provide a solution to what are essentially the mid-market organizations. That's all I've got to say. Questions? Yep.
Are there any import features, say you're coming from another ERP system, like, do you have any functionality for that, or APIs?
Yeah, there's a whole suite that provides for the importation of products, business partners being customers or vendors, currencies, inventory, bills of material. There's an entire range of imports already there. And the import functionality allows you to develop your own mapping onto what you're importing and mapping it onto the fields that we use in Adempier. There are a number of standard import functions there, but typically you want to map what you're coming from and where you're going to. So it provides a full suite of functionality for that.
This is more of a general question about the functionality of the what's it called, Dampier? Is that what you said? The ERP?
Dampier.
Dampier, yeah. Rather than the web integration. But does it handle things like bank reconciliation and import of transactions from Australian banks?
Yes.
It does. Okay.
Yes. It's pretty fully functional.
Yes.
Just by way of the sort of people who are using it, there are 10 user sites. There are sites that have many hundreds of users. It's quite a substantial product.
So web, like the bricks and mortar is web as well?
It is web and PC based, either or.
Is it based in Accenture or EST? Is that written?
It's written using ZK UI, I think. Is that, Stephen?
There's a Java Swing client.
Yeah.
ZK Ajax client, and there's also an HTML client, which is not fully featured because the screen's not very big. But
Yes, no. Like say for example, someone with a tablet. Say for example, with someone with a tablet in the warehouse doing stock taking, for example, they can do so. Yeah. Okay.
That's fine. That pretty much answers my question.
Yeah. And you can, the back end can be run on Windows servers, Linux servers, Apple servers, and you can have a mix of clients, once again being Windows, Linux, or Apple. And many people do have a mixed environment.
I have a question. What's the preferred CRM to work together with?
Well, it includes its own CRM. So the CRM functionality is quite sophisticated, although it's a little different from what you would see in something like Salesforce. But only because I think Salesforce targets outbound CRM much more so than it does inbound CRM. At Dampier, the CRM is sophisticated because it's completely integrated with all of the other ERP aspects. So it operates on the same customer or the same contact database. It operates on the same product database. It's operating on the same set of orders, invoices, and so on. Whereas what you find with a lot of the CRM systems, for example, Great Plains or Salesforce, the integration with the ERP systems and the central business systems is quite tricky. Often using APIs or often using synchronization across some unknown device in the case of something like Great Plains, where it's supposed to be integrated, but in fact there's two separate sets of data.
And are you targeting Drupal 7?
On the list. Okay.
So Drupal 6 at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And are you using services?
Yep.
Yeah.
Web services.
Web services. So, okay, cool.
Dampier has its own user-definable web services. So, we have developed all the web services that are required. However, users can in fact define their own web services inside of Dampier.
And then you extend Drupal to that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
If you've got a legacy system already running and that client wants to move over into the web, would they have to move their old system into yours first before they could use the web component? Because the example, the client they're currently looking at, they don't have any way to export the current data. It's all brick and mortar shops at the moment, and they're all linked back to the one system. They don't have a web interface, but they want one. And so would they have to move their business over to your system in order to integrate, or?
Well, eGility doesn't communicate with any other ERP system except a Dampier.
Yeah.
I don't know what system you're using, but we're not inclined. Sorry, Stephen's got some answers for you, but yeah.
Another option which one of our customers has done is simply take the import and export capabilities that exist in the Dampier system and make that talk directly to their back-end JD Edwards system in this case, two cases. So we get the two systems, we allow the website and the web store to talk directly to the Dampier ERP system, and then we just control communications between the Adempia ERP system and whatever other ERP system you might be using. In the experience we've had to date, that's been with JD Edwards. Okay.
Do you have any support for lay-by on the web store?
I don't think so, do we? I'm just, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, back orders. Yeah.
There'll be solutions for both
Yeah.
both of those, because because the ERP system knows what's going on. If you select the appropriate rules, it will just simply not authorise a shipment till such time as the credit rules have been complied with, which might be, it's got to be fully paid for or whatever. So yes, in that sense it does it, but you won't find anything that talks about lay-by if you look in the menus, for instance.
All right. How about digital downloads? Sorry? Does it do visual downloads as well?
Yes.
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 And for specified periods of validity and such like.
Yeah.
And it logs all of the transactions automatically.
Yeah.
And vouchers and ticketing, virtual.
There's functionality in the back-end ERP system to enable you to deliver goods via download from the website for track, to allow it to be done for particular periods of time, to deal with particular versions, and to know which it logs, for instance, the IP addresses and so forth, and the logins that we use to do all of the downloads. Haven't used it for a long time, so but it's in the system for sure.
Stephen, you should come up here, I think.
Do you mind mention some real-world successful story, like people who have implemented the system and be quite successful?
Yes, I mean, what I mentioned earlier is that this has been developed from a practical customer site, and that site has been running for 2 years and continuing to run now. It's not using the module that we will develop, or have developed in fact, to place into Drupal, because it was initially done to satisfy their needs, which were slightly different. Their needs were to have, I guess, different business rules for the various organisations on whose behalf they sold products. For example, they distributed products for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So, they need a lot of complicated logic to make sure that whoever was buying the products, which were typically prescription-based drugs, didn't buy more than they were allowed, or didn't buy them, over the periods that they had the contract for. So there was a lot of business complexity. However, it was from that we recognised the issue where there was no easy means for Drupal and the e-commerce modules that were available when we looked to be able to integrate directly to the back-end system. So we've taken that experience and simply turned that into something which is much more generic than specific for that customer. But we're quite satisfied that the technology works perfectly well. The performance is just fine, and it's all the sort of the way that we've adopted to do it, with SOAP calls from Drupal and using web services in the back end, is just fine.
Do you also provide support for the integration between the ERP and the point of sale?
And point of sale, yes. Yeah. There's a point of sale solution that is direct. The channels that come into Adempia are web, point of sale, typical sort of terminals in the office and so on.
Can you tell me where the point of sale payment gateway is located in the system? Is it presumably it's not in Drupal? It's in Adempia.
Yeah, well,
and so what sort of payment gateways can you implement? eWay, authorize, anything else?
The others can be added as needed.
So there are a bunch of pre-built payment gateways?
Right now,
Okay.
eWay and authorize.
And, sorry? I thought there was a web services link between you two, and I was speaking to Drupal, and he would talk to Adempia and it would come back. Clearly that's not implemented yet, between the staff.
What, do you want me to give him? Yes, okay. I'm sorry.
The way the payment gateway is implemented, there was the option of having it inside Drupal, which would mean that the transaction has to go from the web to the ERP and back. Well, we moved the payment gateway into a Adempia, which means that it has control on whether the credit card transaction succeeded or failed, and have all the information directly in Adempia. So that, imagine that the EUA sort of support just moved into Adempia. Yeah,
and presumably you can just keep adding modules to Adempia as well because it's open. Right. You're not locked into any particular gateway. Yeah. Okay, cool. Does that?
So far it just happens to be eWay and AuthorizeNet, but as the demand goes, we'll add other sort of gateways.
Yeah. And so does that mean apart from say CMS type features and configuration, Drupal database is pretty empty?
It's a very light Drupal database. It basically keeps just essential information for the transaction to occur in 3 seconds. So it's like when you get to the catalog page or the product page, we pre-fetch before it gets there so that it's ready. So there's a lot of intelligence in that layer.
And so presumably you can manipulate product images from Adempia, but you're using like Drupal image cache or something at the front.
Image cache, yeah.
That was a yes.
Yeah. Thank you. There's a question up there, I think. Oh.
It's probably a question which will be quite easy to answer, but I'm assuming then with the payment gateway in Adempia that it's PCI compliant in the link from Drupal to the ERP and then to the payment gateway?
I think we've answered that. We've handled that before with Jackin would be the expert on this. I'm fairly sure it is PCI compliant because the information as far as the credit card is not stored in Adempia. We retrieve it using the eWay interface to, the credit card data is only stored in eWay, not, it's not stored in Adempia at all.
So is that the eWay token?
Yeah, the eWay token method.
Excuse me.
The credit card information is only stored for the amount of time between when the customer enters it into the system and when we get the authorization number back from the payment gateway. Then it gets then the middle 8 characters get blown away.
And it's stored where?
It's stored inside the. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
At the end of the day, it's stored at eWay.
Yeah.
In that process, it's held for 2 or 3 seconds.
Yes, it's held only for sufficiently long time to get the authorization number back from the payment gateway, then it gets blown away.
And so the connection between, so the web, and so presumably web services is secured somehow as well. Yeah. Okay. Is it all on the same server?
It doesn't need to be, but there's a fair. Joe, maybe you should take that because I know that there's a fair amount of effort gone into making the communication between the Drupal instance and the Adempia instance fairly safe. Like their back end will only talk to communications that get initiated from the website, things of that nature.
How are we going now?
I did come in late and I apologise. Did you talk earlier about what licensing this is? GPL?
Just GPL, yeah.
Okay, and that's for Adempia and
Drupal.
The Drupal module that you've written to go with it?
Yep.
Or the Drupal integration? Okay. And it's only distributed by you guys or it's available on Drupal.org?
Well, it will be available on Drupal.org. Is that right?
There is an instance already available on...
Okay.
I forgot the link. 1 second. Stephen should... We did contribute the work that we did for this particular client. I think the link is on edxa.com somewhere. Look, it's packaged as a complete ERP plus Drupal, because the way it is set up, it basically applies to clients in that kind of dimension. So we've made a lot of enhancements for the more of the normal sort of client. That particular version, we haven't put it out in the market, but we plan to build it as a module, and there's a lot of complexity on the ERP system. So one of the challenges, it's not the reluctance I have to put it on Drupal is the framework that people are used to in terms of product architecture, product customer is relatively simple, and on a Dampier there's a lot of complexity and forethought that needs to go into, what's your implication from a financial standpoint, a lot of these different things. Otherwise you just end up with poor implementations of ERP and fall back. So we're working on trying to simplify that for the Drupal market, and we'll release it as a module with those kind of training videos. Otherwise, just there's a lot of complexity we're dealing with businesses that are 10 million to 1 billion. So it's not like the standard, set up a shopping cart with a few customers and product variations and up and going. Yeah. But there is a version of it that you can download off at exa.com.
So I guess it's a compound question in two parts, which is from what you say, you expect that other people will start running eGility as a platform independently of you. What advantages do you see for your company in that other people running your platform on their servers?
Well, yeah, I'm quite happy to answer that. Our skills are in the implementation and development of the ERP back-end. We understand that, that's our business. And there is a professional services component to that which is quite substantial. In the case, for example, of In Touch, which was the organization that we first put this into in 3 years ago, I think it went live around about November 2009, was it? The services component was in the $500,000 range, so it's not a trivial amount. So we don't mind if people want to deploy the Drupal side of that, which can also be quite lucrative. We're quite happy to stick with the ERP component.
We're also not the only people who provide support for the back-end ERP.
Yeah.
I think that will be all today. Thanks, Martin, for this great presentation. Very professional.
Good.